chapter 6, the Articles of Confederation and Shay's Rebellion today, just so we have some time to do some multiple choice practice and stuff in class. Okay, so I figured you watch this hopefully I would say Wednesday night or Thursday morning, but definitely before the test Friday. Okay, and this will not be on your quiz Thursday. Okay, not on your quiz Thursday. All right, so let's open this up, and we're going to talk about the Articles of Confederation. Okay, so let's talk about some background information. So we're talking like 1776. Remember John Dickinson? Remember how John Dickinson didn't want to declare independence and stuff? Well, what he's going to do after, we declare independence is he's going to put all his efforts into creating a document that will govern this new America. He kind of says, okay, I see the writings on the wall. Let's go ahead and just, if we're declaring independence and we probably will eventually get independence, let's go ahead and have something into place. Okay. And that's going to be what we call the Articles of Confederation. Okay. Also want to point out by 1777, 10 of the colonies had already written their own state constitutions, even though they're still British. And the state legislatures will adopt them. So just pointing out that these states or colonies kind of view themselves as independent, and they write their own powers and all that kind of stuff. And so as this war, still continues, the question is if we win this war and we get our own country, that means we'll have our own government. Okay. There's a fine line with, will this government protect law and order? Or is this government more about protecting our individual rights? Think about protesting. Okay. Protesting tends to be about your individual rights, right? But some people say that, well, that goes against your law and order. So this document that's going to outline this new government, and again, John Dickinson writes it. The answer is it's going to be more about the individual states' rights than having this law and order with the national government. And what this document will be called will be the Articles of Confederation. Okay, so here we go. What were the Articles of Confederation? It's our first constitution. A constitution is a document that outlines the plan for your government. Okay, so the Articles of Confederation, the full name, and Perpetual Union, it's the first written constitution for the United States. Remember, I told you how after, you have 10 colonies create their own state constitutions and legislatures in 1777. It's like, okay, we can see that people they're identifying as American, even though we aren't American yet, and they want to do their own thing. And so John Dickinson wrote the Articles to kind of appease that. And this just shows how the colonists, these future Americans, are really scared of having a strong central government. Think about it. England abused them. They forced them to quarter troops. They killed them. All that kind of, made them follow laws, pass out their, representation in Parliament. They're going to do the complete opposite with the Articles of Confederation. Okay. And so I think this is a great image that depicts who has the power. So y'all know the central government is the national government, okay? And who has the most power here? Definitely the states. The 13 states, it was more like an agreement, like they're all independent, they're all sovereign of each other. And the national government just has a little bit of power. The states do not view that as how we think today, like the United States of America, we are one. No, under the Articles, it's individual 13 states that happen to be a part of America, but they identify as their own state, and that is where the power belongs to the states. Okay, the Articles are the ones that name the nation, the United States of America. Okay, Congress, think the national government. It can make treaties. Yay. Okay. But you could not levy taxes. That means you could not enforce the tax collection, meaning you could not punish someone if they chose not to pay taxes. Okay. Also regulating commerce. Congress could not do that. It has to do with tariff agreements. Tariffs are import taxes. And even to this day, different countries, we have different tariffs. try to encourage trade with others and discourage trade with others. Okay, so states could basically use their own tariffs, and they had their own, states have their own money too. Okay, I think this political cartoon does a great job depicting the struggles and weaknesses of the articles. You see from the left, no national court system. So if two states have some type of conflict, there is no mediator. Okay, no power to enforce treaties. So if Spain is trying to move over here in areas that's supposed to be America, there's no way really to enforce and punish the Spanish. No power to enforce laws. That's pretty bad. Congress can make laws, but there's no way of punishing people for disobeying the laws. What's the point of having laws then? You see, that's the big one right there. No power to raise a national army. There are state militias, but a national army. So what if something breaks out in Georgia? Georgia has to fend for itself. No one else, all these states, view themselves as independent from one another. So if something breaks out in Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia, they don't care what's happening in Georgia. They only care about what's happening in their independent state. And then no power to collect taxes. Well, in case you don't know, we're going to be in the hole so much money from this American Revolution. And Congress can request taxes from the states, but the states do not have to pay the taxes. And think about it. If, let's say, I have to pay $27 grand this year in taxes, but there's no way of enforcing it, am I going to pay the tax? And that's exactly how it was with the federal government. They could ask you, the states, to pay taxes to raise a national army, but they couldn't force it. And so states are not going to pay the national government. Okay, so here's another picture. So each state could print their own money. Imagine that headache if each state had their own currency and like the exchange rates. That's just one big headache. There's no court system, okay, to like interpret laws or as unfair, or if there's like two states, having a fight, no mediator, okay? Congress was one house, unicameral, and one representative for each state. Well, if you're Virginia or New York and you have a lot of people, you're not equal in your mind. You're not equal to Rhode Island or Georgia or Delaware, okay? Federal government cannot collect taxes. They could just ask for you to send tax money. There's no executive branch. So again, for every law, there's no punishment, okay? And then the federal government could not regulate trade. It was the states that had their own trade rules for tariffs. Okay, so a new form of government, ? Okay, remember I told you how by 1777, 10 states had already drafted new constitutions. They defined the rights of the citizens. They had very, strong state constitutions that basically said the states have the power, not the national government, okay? All of these state constitutions did say that in order to vote, you had to be a white male who owned land. If you wanted to be a representative or some elected official, you usually had to be a white male who owned a lot of land, okay? The founding fathers believed that if you owned land, you probably had a bigger stake, a bigger investment in the United States of America. Thus, you should be the one who should be elected to help make laws and stuff. Okay. New Jersey and New Hampshire, they will have a little more liberalness there. So they will actually say, hey, universal, as long as you're a white male, you could vote. Okay. Just very weak state there. Okay. So now let's talk about republicanism versus democracy. Okay. People who tended to support like a stronger national government, okay, supported republicanism. So it's the idea of landed elites who had the power to vote and have, property. Just the idea of, we don't trust the common people, so we need to have a few that represents everyone. More liberal state constitutions, it was more about like everyone, is represented as long as you're a white male. But critics will say it's like mob rule. Even the poor white men get to have a say, and that's just not okay. Okay, so again, there's just how do we determine who gets to vote? How do we determine what's more important, your individual rights or your law and order? Okay, so look at the Articles of Confederation, Article 2. Each state retains its sovereignty, meaning power and independence. And every power, jurisdiction, and right, which is not by this Confederation expressly delegated to the United States and Congress assembled. So basically it's saying is anything that's listed in Congress or listed in the articles that's for the states is their power, and anything else not listed in the articles is reserved for the states. So the states have all the power, basically. Okay, and just remember the articles, a unicameral one-house legislature, Congress, with a very weak national government. Congress can make laws, but there's no way of enforcing the laws because there's no executive branch. Okay, to vote to approve things, 9 out of 13 states had to approve. If you wanted to amend the articles, meaning add any type of change, it had to be a unanimous vote. And y'all know so many different types of people are living in these new states that there's not going to be a unanimous vote with anything. Okay. So let's see very quickly with your notes if there's anything we need to talk about. Okay, we know, let me see. We know about, let's see, let me fill in some blanks here. Okay, we have John Dickinson, who drafted it. Okay, and again, a confederacy, think confederation, is that each state has a separate independent government. Okay, there's no president or executive branch. Okay, now just to clarify, no power to collect taxes. I know it says no power to tax, but again, technically they could say, hey, please pay state taxes to the national government, but there was no enforcing of it. Okay, so no power to force you to pay taxes. I already told you 9 out of 13 had to agree to, vote on things. There's this money that the Continental Congress established, and it's worth nothing at this time, and there's huge debt. Okay, so problems. There's a weak plane of government, a weak central government. Remember, central, national, same thing. Okay, strong state governments. I try to think of it as like the states had, like, we're talking like 95% of the power. Okay, and this was intentional. They did not do this because they were stupid. No, these are the people who were worried about their national government abusing them, like their previous national government, England, doing that. Okay, and remember too, there are some problems. Britain and will still occupy some U.S. soil. So will the Spanish and American soil. So that's a problem. There's no national military to punish them. There's lots of things. There's also a huge war debt. Okay, and the national government cannot force the collection of taxes, so they're not getting money to pay off this war debt. Okay, the Newburgh conspiracy, don't think too much on that. That's just proof that, it had been years, and veterans from the American Revolution still have not gotten their money, their pay, their pension, if you will. And this is a conspiracy to basically stage a coup and overthrow America under the Articles. Because again, the veterans the majority of them haven't gotten their money back. Robert Morris and Alexander Hamilton were actually planning it. George Washington will find out about this and disprove of it. And, Washington's very respected, and they will, it will never be carried out. And again, Washington wasn't even the president yet. He was just a general, okay? So we talked about the ugly. Okay, now let's talk about the good. Okay, so basically, long story short, the good has to do with land. Okay, land that would encourage westward expansion. Okay, so the first thing is the Land Ordinance of 1785. Okay, and the thing that's going to be there will be townships. Think like towns, but up north you call them townships. Okay, and then number 2 is the Northwest Ordinance. The word there is going to be steps. Okay, now let's talk about the difference here. Okay, do y'all see, if you almost could like zoom into this picture, do y'all see how the Northwest Territory, do y'all see it's kind of like a light whitish yellow cream, and it has like some little squares inside of it? That's the Northwest Territory. That's the first territory that will become America after your 13 original colonies or states. Okay, so we get this land, and the Land Ordinance divides it, okay, into 1 square mile. Okay, so all those little squares represent a square mile. Okay, and they're called townships. Okay, and it says for every 16th township, you have to have a public school there. Okay. Now, the reason why these townships and the land ordinance of 1785 is important is because this surveyed the land, meaning it broke it up. And if you survey the land, that means now there are maps made and you can sell the land. You can buy plots of land. Do you see how the land ordinance encouraged westward expansion? Because they divided the land into townships and plots inside the townships, and you could buy that land, okay? And here's the thing. The revenue from that land purchase will then go to the government, okay? Now, the Northwest Ordinance, it pertains to that same area because it's both about the Northwest Territory, okay? But how can these territories, like Michigan and Wisconsin, become states? And the answer is the Northwest Ordinance. Y'all know if you're a territory, you don't really have the same rights as citizens of a state. Okay, like Puerto Rico does not have the same rights as a Georgia, American citizen. And so we want to encourage people to follow the rules to be a territory. So for instance, once you have 60,000 people, you could apply to be a state. Okay, once you had like 5,000, you can have a governor. Okay, when you're applying to be a state, you have to draft a state constitution that Congress would approve or disapprove. You had to ban slavery. You had to allow trial by jury. Okay, so do you see, you have to follow these rules. Once you get 60,000, you can apply to be a state by drafting a state constitution. If Congress approves, ding, 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 you are now a state. But do you see, you must ban slavery. You must, in your state constitution, say slavery is not allowed. Okay, do you see how both of these are successes? Because we're going to get some money here, but most importantly, both encourage westward expansion. Okay. The last thing we're going to talk about, Shay's Rebellion. Okay, let me go ahead and tell you the blanks here. It's war, debt, and increase property taxes. Okay. So again, you can pause this if you want to and go over this, but I've already talked about that. Okay, so here's the ugly. Shay's Rebellion occurred 1786 to 1787. This happened in Massachusetts, okay? Massachusetts, there's a really bad depression, and the state legislature basically raised property taxes. Remember, we're not talking about the Congress here. We're talking about Massachusetts, okay? Massachusetts basically can do whatever they want. And so it will raise property taxes, okay? Well, here's a little background about Daniel Shays. He and others are a American Revolution veteran. And did he ever get paid for his service? Heck no. So he's bitter about that. Now, the state of Massachusetts raised his property tax. Can he afford that bump in a property tax? And he still is waiting on something that's like over almost 10 years due? Okay. No. So what's going to happen is the Massachusetts government will basically foreclose and evict him. Okay. Foreclosure means your property is taken away. Evict means you are like kicked out, like you are like thrown out of your property. Okay. And a lot of people in Massachusetts, these poor farmers who can't afford to pay their property tax, will lose their property. And so the Shayites are led by, Daniel Shays. These are armed Western farmers. And this is how it works today. If you need to, if you're a landowner, whatever, and you need to foreclose on someone's property, you have to, basically, if you're a police officer and you are in charge of evictions and foreclosures, you go every day to the courthouse and you get a list of people from the judge. And the judge says, these people at this address, their property is now foreclosed on and they need to be evicted. Okay, same thing that happens in 2020 was happening in 1786 and 1787. Well, Daniel Shays and the Shayites basically said, well, if we go to these courthouses in Massachusetts and create a human blockade and we're armed, that means those officers, those officials can't get to the courthouse, meaning they can't get to that list of the evictions for the day. Okay, and so what's going to happen is this is going to last. I mean, look, 1786 to 1787. This was at least 6 months, okay? And there will be people who'll be killed, okay? Massachusetts, the governor, wrote urgent letters to every single governor in the United States of America at this time saying, please send your troops to come help put down this rebellion, da, 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 da. Not a single governor responded with help. Basically, they're just like, not my circus, not my monkeys. I do not, they all said, this doesn't involve me. That is why Shay's rebellion lasted so much longer than it really should have, because the Massachusetts state militia had to fend for itself. And so people started to realize if we had a national military, then that national military could help individual states when needed. And thus that law and order would be created, okay? People like Alexander Hamilton would say, yeah, Shay's rebellion was horrible. That's mob rule. We need law and order. We need peace, okay? But people like Thomas Jefferson actually said Shay's rebellion was an awesome thing because isn't it similar to what we did in 1776? Okay, he actually said something about Shay's rebellion being the tree of liberty. Like rebellions, it's like the tree of liberty. It's like manure for the tree of liberty. It's like fertilizer. Okay, so what's going to happen? Why this is important? This event proves that we need a stronger central government, meaning the articles are not working and we need to make some fixes to it. Okay, so what's going to happen is a group of people will meet secretly in 1786 at Annapolis, Maryland. And they decide that they need to fix some things, okay? They realize there's so many problems that they're going to meet again later in 1787 at the Constitutional Convention. And that is where they're like, look, we got to scrap the articles. So again, Annapolis, it was just to make some amendments to the articles. Once they meet there, they're like, holy crap, we got to change. We got to get rid of this. And so at the Constitutional Convention, which will be very secretive, that is when they create the Constitution in hopes of replacing the articles. Okay, so I hope that helped you out with the Constitution. We're all the way up to the Constitutional Convention. We are almost finished with Chapter 6. Let me know if you have any questions.